This is IGN Live. Last year, alien rogue incursion strapped a VR headset to our faces and let xenomorphs jam their tongues through our eye sockets. If that's outside your comfort zone, good news, because the Evolved Edition is offering a different perspective. Here to tell me about it, Survios Chief Product Officer TQ Jefferson and Project Lead Eugene Elkin. Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Absolutely. So VR is kind of a barrier of entry for some people, and you're taking rogue incursion and you're making it a regular game that you play through a screen. For people who aren't familiar, can you give us a little bit of context for what the game is?
The game in general?
Yeah.
Sure. So Rogue Incursion is a single-player, narrative-driven action horror game with survival elements. It's in first person, so we kind of call it a shooter light. It's not twitchy like a Call of Duty or anything like that. It's more story-driven and deliberate. And you're playing a rogue colonial marine, Zula Hendricks, and she has come to this planet, Perdan LV-354, to look for a friend, her former squad mate. And what she discovers there is that the entire facility he's been working in is completely overrun with xenomorphs. Zula Hendricks just happens to be the foremost xenomorph hunter in the alien universe at this point in time, so she's more than ready to take on that challenge. And what you get is like several hours of you locked in a haunted house with great white sharks.
Nice. Now, where exactly in the Alien timeline and canon does this take place?
So the game takes place between the first and second films. So it's right in that time when Ellen Ripley's drifting through the middle cluster. It takes place about 6 or 7 years after Alien Isolation.
Right on. We often see non-VR games get turned into VR games, but it's kind of a rarity to see the other way around. Can you talk a little bit about sort of what accommodations are made in that process? Like how does the game differ? How have you adapted it, I guess?
I'm going to let Eugene talk about some of the technical aspects of it, but like one of my focuses is story and the narrative. And I actually think that we gained a few things going to PC console, and that is we have a greater freedom of telling story in the game. In VR, you are the camera. Since you're wearing a headset, wherever you look is where the camera is going. So that means you're limited in the ways that you can tell a story. You can't do a quick cutaway to see what's going on elsewhere in the facility. You can't take control of the camera because it'll make the player nauseous. So going to PC console means we can move the camera around and we can show different things that you haven't seen or maybe you couldn't see in the VR version.
Yeah, being able to tell the narrative exactly how we envisioned is definitely a big part of it. Not only can we not move the camera, but now we can animate Zula. We can emote and do certain emotions, which in VR is very hard to tell a story that way. And the second, I would say, with the xenomorph, we had a lot more freedom of how we approach combat. In VR, most of the time, to make it generalized for the entire public, we didn't want to add too much quick movement because that becomes potentially nauseating to the player. Here, that restriction is gone. So now the skill check becomes a little different. It's how fast you react, how fast you move. You can move around the environment. You can dash out of danger. So it creates a very unique experience that's significantly different from VR, and yet remaining with the same feel, the way we envisioned the xenomorph combat to be, which is great. The other, I would say, is the graphical quality that we can reach. In VR, you're rendering the thing twice, right? One for every eye. Of course, there are some compromises that have to be made, what we can do in real time at frame rate. Here, we have things like physicalized miasma, which is key aspect of the Alien franchise, right? You're walking in and they're hiding in plain sight, and as they're moving through the environment, the fog will actually separate the miasma. Same thing with the player, and it creates a really tense combat environment.
Nice. Now, I know that with a lot of VR games, it's sort of, it needs to be more bite-sized. Like, it can be overwhelming. And at the same time, little things that might be seemingly mundane in, conventional gaming can be really cool, just like, picking up an object and looking at it. I guess, how are you kind of finding a balance between that, just how people engage with VR differently versus, more conventional gaming?
Well, for VR, more than any other medium, it's about immersion, it's about interactivity. So things like what I can touch and pick up and what I'm doing with my hands is a very important factor in terms of selling the experience and creating that sense of presence. So that's something when we're making the VR version that we're paying very close attention to. If you go into the world, I think one of the early prototypes we did was we had a hat on a box. And so it was like, hey, can I put that hat on? And someone grabbed it and they put it on. We're like, okay, people will want to do that sort of thing in VR because that's just the nature of the medium. Now, bring it to PC and console, mundane things can actually break immersion because it's just picking up a cup. It's like, well, it's just a cup. Why am I not picking up the health stim that I wanted? That sort of thing. So we need to find a balance between physicalizing the world, letting you bump into things so it feels real, but not bogging you down in picking up things that don't really matter to the moment-to-moment gameplay.
Now, the cliffhanger ending of Rogue Incursion caught some people off guard. It's part one of a larger story. Can you say anything about what people can expect from part two?
Not really,
okay.
But what I will say is we had planned from the very beginning that this was going to be a multi-part story, a multi-act story for Zula. And if this first part was really about authenticity, what we wanted to do was show people that we understood the IP. We understood aliens. We can make xenomorphs scary. We can create the atmosphere of the world and drop you into the sense of the movie. Now extrapolate that to what a sequel would be once we've established that as a strong base, and let your mind wander from there.
Right on. Alien Isolation, I got to bring it up. That's obviously like a huge kind of tentpole piece of alien media these days, especially in gaming. Can you talk a little bit about sort of how that influenced Rogue Incursion?
I could say from a sort of a narrative, visual aesthetic sort of way, it was greatly influential on Rogue Incursion. Often Isolation is referred to as the love letter to Alien, the first film, and we set out to make a love letter to Aliens, the second film, primarily the third act where Ripley goes down into the hive and starts, giving it to the xenomorphs. So the Isolation is the benchmark. It's a wonderful game, and I think anyone that makes an Alien game, irrespective of play style or platform, is going to be thinking about that game somewhere in their conversations and in their discussions. One of the things that we did from a gameplay standpoint is that Zula is very different from Amanda Ripley in that Amanda is an engineer. She has to hide from the xenomorphs. She's very much in a survival state. Zula is a trained soldier. She's a hunter in a way, and she's actively going towards them, whereas other people are running away from them. So it's almost the mirror, the photo negative of Isolation is what we were trying to achieve.
Yeah, I would say from what we were inspired from Isolation is definitely the immersion level and the authenticity to the AP. We wanted to feel the tension as you're traversing the environment, but the combat is, I think it's brand new. I think it's something you haven't really seen, that type of combat in an Alien game.
Yeah.
Nice. I mean, that makes sense because, like, Ridley Scott and James Cameron, they kind of refer to it as like, one's the haunted house, Aliens is the roller coaster, and I don't know, roller coasters are fun. They sometimes make people throw up, sort of like VR, all due respect. So after all this development, worth asking, like obviously making games in VR and making games for a screen, totally different experience, so is playing them. Which do you personally prefer?
Oh, goodness. I prefer the storytelling capability of PC console. I love being able to flesh it out and sort of do the cinematic storytelling that was always in my head when we started this project. But the immersion, the fear, the dread, the anxiety, you could tell that Alien was meant to be on VR. So it's amazing, and our job as a team is to bring that fear, tension, anxiety, that energy to the PC console version. So I like them both. They're both my favorites.
Yeah, I would say it's great having both versions of the game. I love VR, but it depends how I feel the day. Sometimes I'm tired from work and I don't want to physically have to aim down or run around and shoot, and other times I do. And in those cases, I like to sit down and really relax and enjoy the game. Well, maybe the fear and anxiety is not helping the relaxation, but at least I'm not doing the physical activity. So it depends on the mood, and both products offer something unique and yet have a common common denominator there where you're getting a very similar experience, and depending how you want to play it.
Mm-hmm. But to your earlier point, VR is sometimes a barrier to people. And we want as many people to play this as possible. So when we started developing the game initially, it was always with the intention of going to PC console so we could get as many people to experience this as we could. So we're super excited about that, and we just really can't wait for everyone else to get to play it now.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. You can experience part 1 of Alien Rogue Incursion in virtual reality on PC, PSVR 2, and MetaQuest right now. Or if you prefer to play without anything hugging your actual face, the Evolve version hits PS5 and PC on September 30th. There's more IGN Live coming up. Stick around.